This is the Football Podcast with your hosts, Tyler, Andy, and Boyer.
Welcome back to Fantasy Football Podcast, presented by two of your performance-enhancing dads, because Boyer dies all the time. So,
yeah, he said something about he was playing all season on a partially torn PCL or something.
yeah,
He's planning on off-season surgery. I think it's really just an excuse coming out for how bad he was.
yeah. I mean, at least he didn't end up naked, so there's a start, right? So,
But more importantly, we have a special
gonna,
guest today.
Yes, we're going to welcome in the champ, Robbie. So, Robbie, congrats, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How's it feel? How's it feel to jump on this? Yeah.
It'll be my first time holding it because I never got the trophy the first year.
Yeah, we didn't get the trophy until year 3. I want to say year 3. I don't know.
That'd be a Jeremy question. Even then, I bet he doesn't know.
Boyer's technically league historian.
Jeremy's still trying to catch up on all those plaques every year anyway.
Yeah.
So. How's it feel to be in the multi-win club with you two? I'm not there yet. I'll be there sooner than later.
In another 20 years, maybe.
Yeah, right.
It feels good. Coming from the underdog of this season, it seems like everyone was rooting against me, and just
I don't know if it was rooting against you, but it was more just looking at how the teams were stacking up. But props to you for doing it with what you had, especially some of the juggernauts we had this year.
Yeah.
I felt like I had to deal with it. I mean, everyone deals with their share of injuries, but I feel like my team was hurt most of the season, if not all of it. And then just making a couple moves here and there and not trading away next year fully in order to improve my team. But again, more injuries hit. So
yeah,
feel like a lot of luck played into this season.
Yeah, this was definitely an odd year across the NFL. I feel like there were some very strange weeks. So why not? Wins are wins.
Yeah. So, Robbie, you want to jump us into your draft, if you remember that far back, a little bit of you went running back heavy. You kept Damian Harris, which turned out to be a great keeper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what gave me the desire to keep Damian Harris. I think I really didn't leave myself much options from the season prior. So
he was like, only $1. So
exactly, he was $1. He's slated to be the number 1 running back. So I figured it wouldn't hurt for $1. So went that.
Sure. Yeah, and then you went pretty heavy on the running backs. Even with Harris, you had Henry and Gaskin and somebody else who's escaping me. So you ended up with 4.
Josh
Jacobs, thank you. You ended up with 4 running backs, which you've done before. You tend to go running back heavy. Is that intentional or just the way the drafts tend to fall to you?
Usually I've been more tempted to just go running back heavy just with the amount of injuries that happen. And it seems to be that teams with at least top 2 running backs have a good chance of succeeding.
Yeah. Definitely fair.
Just because they have more opportunities to touch the ball, where you got 4 receivers out lining up every play, they got to spread the ball around. So yeah, I feel like for me, my idea is go running back heavy.
Right. Well, in wide receiver, you got to guess week to week occasionally. I mean, you look at like the Lockett and Metcalf combo, like who's touching the ball when. I mean, yeah, you get Cooper Kupps and Debo's or whatever every year. That those guys are absolute studs that touch the ball 15 times a game, but that's not regular for wide receivers. Even Tyreek Hill, there were games he didn't have many touches this year.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a handful of guys that you just expected to be good at wide receiver, and they didn't touch the ball near as much as they probably should have. So,
which I had to give a shout out to you, Ty, for dropping Darnell Mooney one week. Don't know what week it was, but I saw him sitting on waivers and decided to give him a shot on my team, and it turned out pretty good for me.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I tend to do that for people. I hate to carry guys that are, the only guys I like to carry are guys that are going to get hurt. I don't want to put that. I don't want to put that curse on everybody else. So just like I gave Paul A.J. Dillon right before Aaron Jones went down, I mean, I'm just good at getting rid of players right before something goes off.
I was trying to get DeAndre Swift from you, but it seemed like you wanted a bounty back for him, and I just couldn't give it up.
Yeah, well, the problem is everybody else was bidding on it, and I was short on draft cash for this year, and I had to get into next year. I was in a weird situation, so having all that money and still having good players, that's not a situation I'm used to being in. So
good thing I'm not used to that.
Well, you don't tend to sell. So, and when you do, you play three of us against each other until 11:30 at night, and then you say, "I'm not selling anyway."
Oh yeah, and then I buy.
All right. So anyway, let's go into the season a little bit. You had a hot start. You talked about Henry some injuries. Henry went down, which definitely wasn't beneficial for you. At the trade deadline, you did snag Fournette and Cooper. We talked about you looking at Swift and that just not happening because me and you couldn't find a good happy medium. Was there anything else you were exploring? Was there anything else that was happening about the trade deadline, or after not getting Swift, were you pretty content with where you were and just hoping for the best?
Yeah, once I wasn't able to get DeAndre Swift, that's when I kind of moved on and figured I would try to find the next best opportunity to improve my running backs with losing Derrick Henry. So that's when I went over to Walker and tried to see what I could pick from his team, since he was fighting for 12th place and he was selling off his team. And when I brought up the idea of Leonard Fournette, and he said he had a couple offers in for him too, which I figured, okay, he's been pretty decent all season. Looking in the fact that he's only a $7 keeper for next year, made it even more enticing for me to want to trade for him. Like I said, not only trying to play for this year, but also not giving away too much for next year too. So he said he was interested in Myles Gaskins, and that's when we were able to add OBJ and then Amari Cooper into the deal too.
Yeah, and Gaskins was hot garbage and probably will be moving forward. So
we had a couple good weeks after the trade, but Leonard Fournette had even better weeks.
Oh yeah,
right.
So sure. I feel like I took a win on that trade, but then of course he goes down right before the playoffs with his injury. So
yeah,
that was a rough one too.
He got you into the playoffs, though, which is where you needed to be.
See, I don't know about that. I lost my way in the playoffs, though.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. How did you feel going in like those 3 division games? Were you like, were you like, I'm just gonna embarrass myself in the playoffs? Were you like, well, everybody has to play each other, so I can sneak my way in here? You get a free win against Boyer, probably not if you're Fryer, but I mean, there's a lot to play with there, but you had the 6-2 start before Henry went down, and then you kind of held the couple game lead over the rest of us because we just couldn't, Fryer and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
So how did you feel those last couple of weeks looking at your team versus some of these other playoff teams versus me and Fryer trying to scramble and catch you?
Looking back on you and Fryer behind, I mean, we know Fryer's track record and kind of know he's not much to worry about. So you were the one that I was more concerned about catching me for first place. Just to say it bluntly, yeah, wasn't too afraid of Fryer catching me because I knew he would.
I told Fryer after he beat me, I was like, you had better pass Robbie to make this not for nothing. And then he goes and loses to Boyer in the last week.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up like the last couple of weeks of the season, just looking at it. So yeah, I took advantage of my win against Boyer, beating him by 20 points. But then the next week was when Fryer absolutely annihilated me. He almost beat me by 100 that week. And then that last week against you too, Andy, I kind of figured I didn't have much of a shot those last couple of weeks, just looking at the team I had to field with COVID going. Also, like, I lost Tyler Higbee, so last week of the season I'm starting David Njoku. So that kind of tells you where my last couple of weeks of the season were. But I kind of feel like I was the Pittsburgh Steelers going into the playoffs, where it was like, all right, I made it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, really.
And
because I mean, let's look at your scores the last 6 weeks. You put up a 53, a 61, You destroyed Ty, putting up your 134. You beat Boyer with 85 points, and then you put up 68 against Fryer and I. So you got a handful of games here under 70 these last few weeks before playoffs.
Yeah.
Then you turn it around, and you are now the highest scoring playoff team ever in the history of the league. You own that record for a single playoff. So,
which I will be honest, we may have to revisit those because I believe there was a stat correction in the championship game where I lost a couple of points. So my championship score was only 128 instead of 130.
Interesting. Well,
So,
I think you had it by a few points, so you may still have it. But either way, hell of a playoffs, man.
Thank you.
Stat corrections happen?
Not often.
Only in championship week.
I guess. Jesus. So I went and looked at the last 4 weeks stats, and it was like I sent it to the podcast fellas here, and it was something like Amon-Ra was wide receiver 2, Joe Burrow was quarterback 1, Damian Harris was running back 2. I think even Higbee was like tight end 3 in that last 4 weeks of the season. So like you got the production when it mattered. So it was exciting to watch.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a whirlwind in the semifinals and the championship game. Like I knew going against Paul that, of course, looking at his team, that it's not an easy win against him.
Never is. He had a killer lineup.
Especially being projected to lose by 12 points. I didn't have a whole lot of faith going into that game. But then watching him and Burrow, that's when he had his first breakout game with his 446 and 4 touchdowns. So that and Damian Harris's game with his 2 rushing touchdowns, that one definitely boosted my confidence a little bit going into the championship game. But I mean, it's always a tough one because you guys know that just because there's a good performance one week doesn't guarantee it the next week.
Yeah,
sure.
So I'm gonna jump into a we've kind of been talking about your team being up and down and whatever, and you being the underdog, quote unquote, right? We had a question come in from one of our league mates. I'm supposed to ask you, have you ever listened to the podcast? Did you know that this existed before we invited you?
I did know it existed. I honestly haven't listened to one in the past. No offense to you guys, but
so he didn't even know.
Busy schedule. I was telling you, Ty, I'm hopefully getting back into school.
Right.
So I'm taking a couple classes now and still working full time. So time is at a premium right now.
That's fair.
So clearly you're not getting your fantasy advice from us, which smart.
I mean, look, I won the championship, so I got to say something.
Are there any sources that you do use, like Matthew Berry or, Yahoo's weekly rankings or anything like that you tend to go to?
I just kind of go with my gut, honestly.
Well, that hurts.
A little toilet tinker time.
That's fair.
And so another league mate, talking about sources you might use, your gut. He wants to know, first off, why you would do this to us, winning a championship. And second off, he wants to know if your source is voodoo magic or what, because it seems like there's something else there with the team you had rolling into the playoffs.
I can't say where it came from. I don't know. If I knew, I would bottle it up and keep it for next season again. We'll have to see what happens.
So it wasn't voodoo magic. You weren't.
Unfortunately, I can't say it was voodoo magic.
All right. Robbie doesn't have that ability. Got it. And real quick, before we move on, because Robbie doesn't listen to the podcast, he doesn't have a clue what's happening. But
all the more impressive.
We're gonna hit him with a little. Pow! What you drinking?
Manhattan.
Because he's a guest that has something to drink. What are you drinking, Robbie?
I've got a Manhattan over here, so I got some bullet bourbon, my sweet vermouth, and some bitters, with a maraschino cherry and granite whiskey ball.
Classy.
Can't water it down.
Classy.
Andy, what do you got over there, man?
Fat Tire.
Oh, it's a nice beer.
Old Reliable.
Yeah, it's a good beer when I was 19 and 21 and wait, what?
Aren't you at church right now?
Shh. There's a whiteboard behind me. Nobody can see.
Can you say sucks at church? Don't put that on the church board.
Because I am in my office, I am drinking a polar pop. Don't tell anybody that this is bad for you. Colin Kelly told me not to drink this in our chat.
Yeah, don't do it. It's bad for you. Beer's fine.
Moderation for everything.
Right. So, all right. Yeah, Robbie will tell me. He does this health thing. I can have one of these occasionally, right?
Definitely.
Every Tuesday.
Every. All right. Let's hit a couple more questions here. Andy, you got one for him?
Yeah. So, I'm gonna call this person out by name just because it makes sense with the question. Walker wants to know, what are your thoughts now that the season's over on the trade that you guys made? Was there ever a point that you felt like you needed to do more to your roster, or were you just willing to let it roll and hope for the best?
I mean, of course, like, I don't know. I didn't feel overly confident with my roster, especially leading up to the deadline when everyone else seemed to be going crazy, making moves left and right. Like Paul, Jeremy, everyone was just trying to win this season. And I was kind of like trying to win this season for sure because I was sitting in first place. But then again, not trying to keep a budget for next year too and not trading away all my draft dollars.
Sure.
But again, like I said earlier, I honestly feel like I did win the trade, especially getting Leonard Fournette, who did score 37 points one week, which definitely helped propel me into the playoffs. And then again, he's only a $7 keeper, potentially for next year. So yeah, I would have to say that went more in my favor than Walker's.
Yeah, and interestingly, for that being like the one big splash that you made at the deadline, neither of those guys really did much for you in the playoffs. I don't remember exactly what Amari did, but it wasn't anything noteworthy, and Fournette was out for the whole playoffs. So
yeah, so Cooper had a touchdown in the championship week, and then he had one in the semifinals too. So he scored 14.5 week 16 in the semifinals, and then he had 7.8 in the championship game.
Okay, so about right on.
That's more of just
10 a week. Sure.
Yeah. The Cooper was more just a throw-in with OBJ because we were kind of centering the trade around Fournette and Gaskin.
Yeah.
With some draft dollars thrown in there too.
Yep, that makes sense.
So how rewarding is it? Not that you listen to me, Andy and Boyer, hate on you all year because you didn't listen to the podcast. We already talked about this. But how rewarding is it to show all the haters in the group how to win a championship, first off, and to shut up the overrated commissioner?
It feels good to win again. I won our inaugural season back in 2011, so I've waited 10 years to finally see a trophy since it wasn't in existence back in year one. So I'll definitely be looking forward to the draft this year and take that home with me. And Jeremy was a great opponent. Again, he traded up at the deadline, improved his team greatly. But again, just came up a little short like his quarterback.
What do you think the best move that you made all season was? I mean, you had a ton of great pickups. You mentioned Mooney already, and obviously
I would definitely have to say it was my pickups. Adding Joe Burrow once Russell Wilson went down. Like, I know I scrambled a couple weeks and couldn't find a solid quarterback. I'm trying to look back on my week to week and see who I played. So yeah, I used Burrow a bunch after I had picked him up. And then at the very end of this season, how we talked about him, Amon-Ra St. Brown was huge.
Sure.
I kind of, when I saw that TJ Hawkinson went down and was going to be out for the season, I figured, Jared Goff's got to throw the ball to someone, and he was number one on the depth chart. So I figured I'd give him a shot, and seemed to be successful.
Well, yeah. and you talked about Jeremy making a big move at the deadline. He picked up Tariq Hill from me.
Yeah.
And he put up 2 and 7 and 20 and then 1 and 4. So it might have been beneficial that he picked up Tariq Hill from me going into the playoffs.
Definitely. But that's hard. I mean, it's Tyreek Hill, so you're not expecting him to put up single digits every single week.
Right. He had one game that was good. Other than that, it was, 1, 3, 4, and 7. It was crazy. Like some of the big names that he was going out and acquiring just didn't help him in the end.
Yeah.
And shame on us, the rest of the league. I'm looking at Amon-Ra. here. Robbie picked him up after waivers processed after week 14, coming off of back-to-back weeks of 12 targets after Hawkinson went down. Nobody put a waiver claim in it on him. And Robbie picked him up on Wednesday afternoon or whatever it was after all that nonsense was done. Didn't spend a single fab and added a league winner to his team. So I don't know what we're doing, but we all missed it.
If you look before that though, the 3 weeks prior to the 12.
Oh yeah, I mean it was nothing before that, but Hawkinson went down, Swift was down, and 12 targets, and it obviously continued. And the production was, decent. It was 80 yards, 70 yards. He had 1 touchdown in those 2 games, so nothing noteworthy. But I mean, volume like that you can't get.
In the league's defense, he's also playing for Detroit. So how much are you really expecting from their offense?
Yep.
It was definitely I felt like it was a risky play every week, setting him in my lineup, but it proved to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about you backdooring yourself into the playoffs. Would you like to just give Boyer a thank you now, or are we just going to skip that?
Are you buying him dinner or something?
I definitely appreciate it. Well, I don't know who it is, if it's Boyer's winning or just Fryer being Fryer. I don't know who fair.
Who we can thank more.
Yeah. Who's it on more?
That's fair.
Yeah, that Monday night game, watching the Bears and Vikings play, was definitely a nerve-wracking one with Fryer having Dalvin Cook and David Montgomery playing. I was sitting down in the basement here watching the game, and I had a very close eye on it, making sure that neither one of them was getting past the line of scrimmage, which neither one of them seemed to that week.
Yep, he was nowhere near the points he needed to catch up to Boyer in that game. It was, I wanted that to be at least a little bit closer so we could all be excited watching it. I know the whole league was watching that game, waiting to see what the outcome was, but Fryer being 15 points shy wasn't quite as exciting as we were hoping.
Yeah.
But you won't complain.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain about that one.
Something else that I've noticed about your teams, and not just this year, but it seems to be a strategy of yours. So you tell me if it's intentional or just something that I'm spinning out of nothing. But yeah. I feel like you target touchdowns a little bit more. You tend to have a guy like Adam Thielen, that's going to maybe get 800 yards and be nowhere near 1,000. But if he gets you 10 touchdowns, then he's going to do it. Is that something that you're looking for when you're picking guys that are more likely to score as opposed to the yardage?
That one was just kind of more of a coincidence. Like, it got to the point in the draft where I'd spent so much money on my running backs, and I had so many running backs that I had missed out on some of the other top receivers who are more likely to get more yards. And it was kind of like, he's the next best available, so I should go out and spend.
Fair enough. Yeah, because I know touchdowns played a huge role in you demolishing Jeremy in the championship. And those who watch the podcast know that was Boyer and I broke down your path to victory. And I called out that if you were going to beat Jeremy with the deficit that you were looking at in the projections, that it was going to have to come from touchdowns. And like real quick, 15 minutes into game time, you had like 4 touchdowns already. Jeremy
it was in
like,
the first 5 minutes of that game. That on the Sunday, it was Damian Harris ran one in. I think Mooney caught one, and Josh Jacobs all had one right at the very beginning of the games. Yeah, you immediately were projected to beat Jeremy as soon as kickoff happened. It's like, holy shit, like this is going to be a real game. We were all expecting Jeremy to just kind of steamroll you, not expecting your team to do 134 2 weeks in a row. Yeah. But you did it.
So do you have anything else you want to throw out there? Anything that you may or may not want to share with the league? Advice? Thanks to us for our bad advice for everybody else, because we must have steered everybody else wrong.
Yeah, we helped.
Anything else you want to throw out
here?
Here?
Steering other people wrong and giving them terrible advice for their starting lineup and not just going with their gut. I also got to thank Boyer for taking down Fryer and Fryer being Fryer.
So I guess the last question I have for you is now that you've won a championship, Are you planning on going to Disney World?
I'm gonna sit in my basement for right now.
All right, that's fine.
I want to keep drinking here.
Probably a better choice.
Yeah, there's COVID about. I think it's probably safer to stay home.
Yeah. No, only an idiot would go to Disney right now.
Definitely.
That's not what I
don't
said.
understand adults going to Disney either.
Yeah, no, me and my
I mean,
family.
the kids can't get in without an adult, I don't think.
Well, that's fair, but if you're just a straight up adult going to Disney, it doesn't make sense.
My brother-in-law went to Disney on his honeymoon, and I was like, okay, that's not what I would have chose, but
yeah. Hey, to each their own.
Robbie, me and my family just got back from Disney, so that's why I had to throw it out there.
Gotcha.
It all worked out for you, Ty.
Yeah. No, we only came back with a little bit of COVID in our house. It's fine. So, all right. With that, Andy, you got anything else for him?
I don't think so. Congrats, man. None of us
Yeah.
thought you could do it. I don't know if you're being honest, if you thought you could do it, but
I really did not think I could do it either.
but you did it, and that's all that matters. So
did.
your name gets to be on the trophy a second time, and Jeremy's doesn't. Suck it, Jay.
I'm glad I was able to keep him off the trophy. We can't taint it in any way.
It's probably better because we get a lot more of those pictures from last year, except for with the trophy. We don't need that right now.
So wait, have we figured out yet? Since it was the duo, do we get 6 pictures or is it 3 with the both of them in them?
I believe it's 3 with the both of them in there.
Okay.
Is what it should be. So we'll
That's
see how they do it.
Interesting.
Sounds like their problem, especially since Danny's out in Colorado now, and Matt's in Indy.
Oh.
So they're gonna have to get together for these pictures sometime.
Photoshop.
Yeah, some creative Photoshop.
Sounds like cheating the system, but it's fine. So, all right. Well, if we don't have anything else for him, everybody else, you're not as good as Robbie. You don't suck as bad as a duo. We'll see how next season plays out. I hate you all. Don't really care what's happening in your life. And we'll catch you soon. See ya.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks, Robbie.